Hello, everybody. Welcome to Everybody Matters, our Family and Friends edition. I'm Jill Catherine, the host of the call, and this is our time that we get together once a month to be here to provide support, to provide guidance, to offer some insight for you all who have a loved one who's struggling with an eating disorder or body dissatisfaction. So thank you for tuning in and joining our call today. If you feel comfortable to share, please let us know when you tune in. We'd love to know, what it is that has brought you to the call today, and if there's anything you're needing support on, please let us know. We're here for you. So whenever you feel comfortable, please let us know. So how our calls run here is, we want to be here to support any specific questions that you have. Every person's situation with the brain disease of an eating disorder is different, and their needs are different, and how they get support and treatment is unique to each individual. And so whether you're tuning in because of your loved one who's struggling with this disease, what we aim to do here on this live chat is to broadly provide encouragement and insight and support for you as you can help them on their journey. Treatment for an eating disorder is individualized. It really is based on the individual. However, there's some critical components, and having a treatment team is the most critical thing for your loved one. Eating disorders aren't something people can heal with on their own. It's not a fad. It's not a diet. It's not, it's not just an interim thing. Eating disorders are mental illness, and I think the best way we like to talk about is how they're a brain disease. It's something literally affecting your brain. And although we don't wake up with an eating disorder overnight, there's many different factors that go into how it develops in our brain, but it is something that happens and can then be created because of a number of different factors. And so there's psychological and personality and genetic components. Those who struggle with this disease who are at risk. There are those, and then you have the socio and the cultural factors that play a role in it. So there's a lot of different things, and then many times there could be a specific crisis or a transition of life or a change in life that intersects with the different factors that play into people who struggle with this disease. But it is something that certainly isn't just about the vanity of the body, and it's not something just about the willpower to eat. It is a much more complicated disease of the brain, that although people's relationship to an eating disorder might have started because of wanting to change the body or having it look a certain way or lose weight or be thinner or meet a certain standard of the body, whether it's a beauty standard or athletic standard or a health and fitness standard. There's a lot of reasons, and or it could be there was a different emotional thing that happened in that person's life. So it's different on how this all comes to be. When the brain disease takes hold is when there's been a significant underfeeding of the body that changes the chemistry of how what's happening in the brain, the neuroscience. So when you underfeed the body, it starves the brain, and your neural pathways change. And we have great neuroscience now. Studies are being done on what happens in the brain of an eating disordered person, and that's why it becomes this disease of the brain, because the pathways change. And then an obsessive compulsive voice that is loud becomes loud in the brain once this underfeeding and starving happens. This obsessive compulsiveness it enhances. And that's why you'll frequently hear people who struggle with this disease say, you know, this voice in my head and the obsessiveness that happens. So, you know, I start with that just to really solidify the intensity and the magnitude of this illness. And the underfeeding of the body can look differently for all people. You can't see when people are underfeeding their body always. It doesn't always look like, you know, a malnourished, very thin, starved person who could be underfeeding, and how it can affect the brain. So it's not always something you can see, and you can't necessarily see or know how long that, as long as that underfeeding is happening, how long then does it take for the brain to change its chemistry? And it can happen fairly quickly. So when we think about this disease, and you know, that's why when we talk about having a treatment team, it's so important to have a treatment team in place, meaning to have your loved one connected with a physical medical doctor, a nutritionist, and someone who has in the medical field, either one of those two, real, you know, experience treating people with eating disorders, because it's a very difficult condition to deal with. So you want someone working with your loved one who has experience in that field, and with a psychologist or a therapist. And so setting up that treatment team with that doctor and that nutritionist, medical provider, and a counselor is initial, you know, essential steps into supporting your loved one. You know, they say it's about only 1 out of 10 people get treatment from struggling with an eating disorder. Only about 1 out of 10. And 6 out of those 10 who get treatment are likely, those who get treatment, 6 out of 10, 60% are likely to recover. So it's a very low statistics that, you know, 1 out of 10 will seek treatment. Out of those who seek treatment, 6 out of 10 are going to recover through that. So, you know, your chances, your loved one to heal through this mental disease, because the brain can heal itself once the body starts to refeed, and then you start to do, your loved one does the deeper emotional and psychological work that is playing a role in this. Recovery is very possible. It is very possible, but it is essential for recovery to happen that there's a foundation of having clinical care provided. So, you know, one of the things that the Upstate New York Eating Disorder Service does so well is they put that whole treatment team in place. They do case management. And having your loved one in a system that's being case managed is so important. It might not always be understood why, but you know, those of us in the field of eating disorders, we understand the complexity of all the care that that person needs. And not having a health professional managing that case, looking at the whole picture, is oftentimes where your loved one can fall through the crack, where they're not able to be directed and get the support that they specifically need in their immediate case. So one of the questions we have here is from Baxter. They say it's so difficult getting insurance to support a family's effort to get their child treatment, to assist financially what we have insurance for in the first place. And, you know, it unfortunately, Baxter, that's true for many families, and it's so frustrating. And that's part of this disease, and it's part of the journey, is dealing with, all of a sudden, you're not just dealing with your loved one and their health and well-being, you're now constantly dealing with the healthcare industry, which is a whole other beast in itself. And it's super difficult. You know, I'm just going to reiterate why it's so important, working with case management. So up at the Upstate New York Eating Disorder Service, hopefully you're connected with them. Their case manager works really specifically on how to get your child support through the current insurance option that you have. And that might not be that option, what you think is the best treatment you can do because your insurance is going to cover the option of treatment that you thought was number 3. And you have to make that decision. And I'd be the first one to say, just so you know, I mean, my family's insurance, this was 20 years ago when I was sick with the brain disease of the disorder. And our insurance we had insurance, my parents did. But it was very limited into how I could get help. And the treatment I got was on a list of 1 to 10, 1 being the best, 10 being the worst. The quality of treatment I got was probably, about an 8. So it wasn't the best eating disorder, inpatient treatment, but it was something. And so I just want to say that I'm not trying to advocate that all treatment is good treatment, but usually in any treatment program, there's some aspect that's good out of it. And insurances are real challenges that we all have to face. And so I really encourage any family member to utilize the case management services at the Upstate New York Eating Disorder Service. Their case manager, can help to keep troubleshooting and finding options. And they're really good at knowing a broad set of providers who work with different insurances. But there's no way to get around it. And it's unfortunate. I can just empathize with you and encourage you to use that case management service. Because, it also, because providers, since they're a clinical provider at the Upstate New York Eating Disorder Service, they can deal with a different level of frustration with insurance companies. I feel that those of us, on the outside and who are emotionally have all this stuff going on, it's really difficult for us to keep pushing in these ways. So that's part of the any other questions that any other specific questions that you have in terms of support and ways that you're looking to be supported on this journey? One of the things that I wanted to bring to our call today, Baxter says it's much more difficult when your child is a male. Your options just aren't the same. And I, shake my head, not at you, Baxter. I'm just empathizing, feeling the frustration that they aren't the same, And I got to tell you, that's why most of I got to tell you this, I've been in this field for 20 years, right? Anything that you see today of support or service or opportunity that those who are struggling with eating disorders are trying to get insurances to cover has been, more than 2 decades of family members like you struggling with the system and needing to push change. And so what I mean by that, we are where we are today, which is actually we've made leaps and bounds in so many ways than 20 years ago. But because families like you were constantly hit against these wall for getting treatment and just pushed and lobbied and started nonprofits and, just really involved themselves in the mental health and eating disorder movement. And we've made great change over 20 years. And what you're talking about, Baxter, is like that next big push is how helping, insurances, having a young male and a young boy and men in general, their opportunity and access to get treatment it's still difficult in the female gender, but not nearly the same that I know of too. And so we have so far to go, and that doesn't solve your problem or give you and your family the help that you need. But I just want you to know that it has really been because of families like yours through these decades that we've been able to make changes in the system for the better. And it doesn't happen overnight, that's for sure. But your family matters. Your son matters. Your voice matters. Your letters matter, to your congressman, to your insurance company, to the National Eating Disorders Association. Your experience matters. And it matters in your own individual way. And there's no way that you're the only family that's having the same access issue. So, and I don't say that to pacify you. I say to know that you're not alone in this. And we need to put our voices out there. You need to put your voice out there and let it be known. It's the only way things change. And then, you do what you can, and you got to take care of your family. Bottom line is, but your voice is important. And it's a difficult thing. So you can just explore what those options are and make those decisions. And that's the thing. I mean, literally trying to make those decisions, one step at a time. As you build a treatment team for your son or for your loved one, you kind of need to make these decisions one step at a time and explore where they're going to take you. But the most critical thing is that if I can give you some support on, because this insurance challenge is a real one, and it can take a lot of time, and I don't want to diminish that. But what I want to give energy and voice to and encourage you is that what's going to be so critical is you also not just getting totally sidetracked and all that, but being there for your loved one and communicating with your loved one and letting them know that what you're coming across with the insurances, letting them know that you're doing everything you can each day to try to provide them support. And in the meantime, trying to do something for them to get support. Because here's a very real thing, and I don't say this to scare or as a fear tactic. I just want to share it as a real thing, is it's not uncommon that these insurance challenges happen, and it's not always a very fast, expeditious solution. So it can take a little bit of time. What you have to be mindful of is your loved one could be in more of a crisis internally than you're aware of. And time can be of the essence for them. So we never want to miss the urgency of our loved one who needs support when we get bogged down with how the insurance company is holding us along. And so there's no perfect answer to any of that, of how do you then balance meeting the immediate needs and crisis of your loved one, but not being able to get access right now. There's not a perfect answer to that or solution. All I can say is what's most important is meeting that immediate need. And so that might be just today, okay, right now, this week, we don't have all of the bigger insurance stuff figured out, but I know this week you might need to see, a counselor, a nutritionist or whatever, a couple times this week, and we don't have the insurance stuff figured out. And that's a very scary place, I understand, for families to be in and make these decisions financially, but it's all about communication. It's all about communicating with your loved one and saying, what exactly do you need right now? Because we don't know how long this is going to take. And I know in my situation, it was taking just like a few days, and that felt too long for me, that I self-harmed. Right? So you don't want to assume that they're okay because they don't look like they're really crisis. This brain disease is serious stuff. Yeah. So, as you say, one day at a time, absolutely. But in that day, try to find out what they need that day. And you don't have to have all the financial stuff figured out. You might need a short-term place and say your loved one might be like, I'm in crisis. I need to go somewhere right now. I need to speak with someone right now. And then you just say, you talk to that medical provider, it's a counselor, a nutritionist, you tell them everything that's happening. Would they be willing just to work with you, giving you some grace period? However, just create a sort of another financial arrangement until all those other details can happen. Because that gap is where very dangerous things can happen. And it's all about communication. It's really staying in touch with your loved one and asking them how they're feeling and what they're needing. And just going it, like you said, just that one day at a time. But, it never hurts to ask. So as you're exploring, what your loved one's options are and talking to those people, letting them know the situation, always ask for whatever it is that you need or what you hear that your loved one needs. And the most important thing then is really, something we talked about in our chat last month on this family and friends group is just the constant need to keep the line of communication open up with your loved one. And that's not an easy thing to do, I know, because a lot of times those who are suffering from this can shut down. They might not want to communicate. They may, but they might not want to communicate by their body language. They blow you off. They might not want to talk about it. They might be angry. They might not want treatment. I mean, there's a lot of scenarios that happen in this. Regardless of all that, those details, it's not about the details of the scenario. What's important is keeping that channel of communication opening. So even if they don't want to talk, they don't want treatment, all of that, you still can talk. You still can keep that lifeline open. You still, every day, can have an opportunity to sit with your loved one, be honest with them, and honest from a place of open-heartedness, like in terms of just open-hearted vulnerability, being honest about your fears, your feelings, your worries, your concerns, being honest about, depending on where you're at about this disease, you might not know anything about it. You might not get it. You might not understand why it's happening, and you can be honest with those feelings and at the same time ask them to help you to understand. I mean, the greatest thing any loved one needs from their family member is to know that they're there, they're going to be there for them, even if you don't get it. Baxter says, we have had many tearful nights. And I'm sorry to hear that. And at the same time, I'm glad to hear that, because that means you're walking into this conflict. You're not trying to avoid it, because if you walk into it, it is going to be tearful. It's scary. This is a very complicated and it's a very confusing disease of why and how and what to do. And it's, and you're not going to know all the answers to this, for quite some time. It's going to unfold slowly. You might have some idea why this is happening to your son, but there's many layers to it. And so what I really want us all to understand as we support our loved one is keeping this line of communication open, reminding our loved one that it's okay if they don't want to share with you today, that they can share with you tomorrow. It's okay for them to know about maybe some, if you can start to get an idea of what are the emotional issues happening with your loved one and less focused on the nutrition, eating, body piece, And I know that's really difficult to do because the most critical thing is your loved one needs to eat. They need to feed their bodies so they don't starve their brains and their bodies, and so they don't die, because everybody needs to be fed. Your body needs to be fed. Your brain is an organ. It needs to be fed. So, we tend to all focus on the food, which is a natural thing to do, and that's really important. But the food is just the symptom, right? There's something else. There's other stuff going on. And so you want to treat the symptom, but you don't want to stay focused on the symptom. You want to stay focused on what's going on underneath. So it's like food is the medicine, right? So if your loved one is sick, you're not going to be talking all day about the medicine. You're going to be talking all day about how they're feeling, And so same type of thing. Do your best not to get lost in the symptoms of it and stay focused on the feeling part of it. And in that spirit, what it's going to help you to do, this whole thing about keeping the lines of communication open, is if you can start to connect and communicate with your loved one about those feelings they're dealing with in ways that you've dealt with it. Because we've all dealt with fear, shame, worry, wanting to please, meet the expectations of parents, do a good job, achieve, be liked, be loved. All these types of things, these emotional needs, aren't the reason, we don't wake up with the eating disorder when you have these emotional needs, but there's a number of different factors, like we said, that play involved. And when those all intersect, this disease develops. So, and in the healing of the disease is the medicine of the food, but is dealing with the deeper emotional stuff. So when you're able to identify what some of that is for your loved one, talk to them about it. Talk to them about it, not as a place of judgment, but as a place of honesty of the stuff that you struggle with in those same emotional things. How you've been able to sort of build emotional intelligence around those emotional things, because that's human nature. So the job of our loved ones can be, or the way that you can support your child in this, of course, is that initial parental, you take care, you protect, you do whatever you can, hopefully, thankfully, thank you for helping. That's natural. And then after that, after all those parental instincts, are those real human instincts of conversation about these emotional challenges that we all sort of have. And as a young person, it's very confusing how to deal with all these emotions. It's very confusing as a young person in a body, in a society that is telling us we need to look a certain way, be a certain way, and, act a certain way. So it becomes an opportunity for families to just really connect in deeper ways that maybe we don't always make time for. Maybe we don't always think it's important, and that's okay. But this disease requires conversations to kind of go to a deeper level. Because if you stay on the surface is where the symptoms are. The surface is where we don't want to eat, or we're overeating or binging or doing self-harm. That's where if you stay on the surface, you're staying on the symptoms. You don't want to live there. You got to address the surface. But it's time to go deeper. And the beauty of this, and believe me, I know it's a weird irony to say the beauty of this, but the beauty in this is that it forces you to go a little bit deeper in the family unit. And that's not always a comfortable thing to do. And it's not always easy. But the disease is requiring your loved one to have to get very honest with themselves. Just like an addiction, you would think. people who struggle with, I'm not saying it's the same, but I'm using it as an example. There's similarities. It's not the same disease though. But like an addictive person who's struggling with an addiction, for them to get well, they have to become very honest with themselves and what's going on for them and why they're using and all those types of things. This same type of thing is going to happen for your loved one, no matter how old or young he is. He's going to have to get very honest with himself. And that's a scary place to be, especially if we don't really know how to manage these difficult emotions of feeling shame and pressure or whatever it may be that they're feeling. So where you can find, there's no easy way for a family to support their child in this. There's no perfect way. There's no quick way. I think if you can just accept up front that this is messy, accept up front that it's not your fault, you're not the person to blame. There's certainly going to be aspects of you and the family dynamic that have affected your loved one, but it's nobody's fault. It's not about blaming. It's about learning and understanding how we all play roles in this. But just accepting that and knowing it up front, and then knowing that you want to stay mindful to not get lost in the stress and the distraction that comes with all the paperwork and all the insurance stuff. And remember to tune into your loved one as on a daily basis of are they okay? Are they safe? Do they feel safe inside themselves? And by you keeping that line of communication open, it reduces the shame that they feel. You got to understand, eating disorders, when you're struggling with it, you feel so much shame inside. It's a disease that makes you feel riddled with shame. So as a parent, if you can open that channel and say, there is nothing to be embarrassed about. This is a mental illness. I mean, your loved one, it's not about willpower. It's not about pulling yourself up by your bootstraps. Baxter says that's a word we are using. It helps. Good. It does good. I'm glad. What is it that what is it? The word you're using. I'm just going to clarify what it is, the word that they're using that helps. Safe. Good. I mean, that can help you in leaps and bounds in your child's willingness to recover. That knowing that great. So Baxter's saying they ask their child, "Are you safe?" And they might not even know what that means, or are you feeling safe? And just helping them to explore that even more. But at least that lets them know that you're there. You're already setting a standard of, we're not judging you, we're not shaming you. You might not get it. You don't have to get it. Baxter says we both have an understanding how we will use it when talking with one another. That's great. I'm so happy to hear that. So as we, look to wrap up today's call, that is really about keeping the lines of communication open. I'm going to ask, Baxter, are there any more questions or ways I could provide guidance or support? Because I'm sure if Baxter has a question or looking for other ways to get support, you may be as well. A lot of these, the details of all the family dynamics is obviously different for every family and friend, but there definitely are common challenges. And, hopefully we're able to address some of what you may be experiencing with your loved one. So just waiting to hear back from Baxter to see if he has any more questions. But what we really wanted to, spend some time thinking about and talking about and exploring is the need to keep the lines of communication open. And know that your family is not alone in this, that your voice matters, that it's the voices of families like you for the last decades that has helped make change in the way people are getting treatment, getting access to treatment. There's still many obstacles, but we've certainly come a long way and we have a long way to go. So we appreciate, you communicating your experience um, to politicians, to the National Eating Disorders Association, who does, advocacy and policy work. That's really important. So thanks for tuning in today, and we will see you next month on the second Wednesday of the month. Thank you.